Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian pro-Russian, Russian, the Russians.
Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this.
The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots. Their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Devolution Power Hour. I'm Chris Paul, obviously. John is not here tonight. Ghost of Base Patrick Henry will be in very shortly. He is resetting some computer equipment. He's got some technical problems, but I think that we're going to get through these little hiccups and then we're just going to have a nice show. We might as well knock out a couple of ads and take care of business before Ghost gets in. And first, we have a word from Rattlesnake Meats. Has this ever happened to you? You buy something from an American company thinking it's made in the USA, but it turns out it's just from some sweatshop overseas. It's even worse with beef. The label may say product of USA, but that only means it was packaged here. There's no guarantee it was raised here, and chances are it wasn't. Rattlesnake Meat Company has the solution. Buy directly from the rancher, 100% American beef, born, raised, and processed in Kansas, USA. Aged for 21 days for maximum flavor. Don't be deceived by mislabeled foreign beef. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/meat and use promo code BADLANDS20 for $20 off all American premium beef from the Rattlesnake Meat Company. Don't tread on me is their motto. Support the American rancher. Tell the multinational beef cartel to take a hike. That's badlandsmedia.tv/meat, promo code Badlands20. And then we also have Safe Pulse. Today's show is sponsored by Safe Pulse. At Safe Pulse, we are dedicated to keeping you and your family healthy. The top quality medications like amoxicillin, azithromycin, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine at unbeatable prices. Our streamlined ordering process makes it easy to stock up on health essentials. And now with exciting news about fenbendazole showing promising cancer research, we are proud to offer this alongside our antibiotics and viral care meds. Don't wait. Prepare for any health scenario today. Get your supply and stay ahead of the curve with Save Pulse. Now save even more. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/meds and use the promo code SAVEHEALTH at checkout to get a 20% discount on orders over $100. And now we do actually have with us one ghost of based Patrick Henry.
Chris, what's up, man? How are you tonight?
I am holding it together. And, that's something. There's something to be said for that these days. Before we get into our discussion, I also do want to just remind everybody that we are having our Great American Restoration Tour event in Plymouth, Massachusetts. We'll be there 2 weeks from right now. And shortly after 2 weeks from this moment right now, Gordon will probably be singing karaoke somewhere. And if you're live, if you're there, you're not going to miss that. I don't know if we're going to show that on the virtual stream, but you can get access to the virtual stream by going to badlandsmedia.tv/events. You get behind the scenes photos and videos. You get to join in the GART chat. And through that chat, you can ask the panel's questions, etc. So get the virtual ticket if you can't attend live. And with that virtual ticket, you also don't have to watch live. You can watch at your leisure. And with that, I guess let's get started. And we're going to talk about, I wish I had the theme for cops up. I should have grabbed it off YouTube. We're going to talk about bad boys. And if there are still any swimming around the Trump administration, inside the administration, inside the supposedly pro-Trump media, and then, of course, outside. And Gordon, what's your feeling about the bad guys? Have we defeated them all? And the fake election of 2024 was the end of all the bad guys, or are there still bad guys to deal with?
I firmly think there's still a lot of bad guys to deal with. And, the more I've thought about it, and I've been thinking about it since election night. I mean, since election night, I think the metaphor I use is it's like we still got to watch the tree line. I mean, this feels a little too easy. Like this feels like they're giving it to us, meaning the election. They're giving up a little too easy. And I think there's a lot of strategy there. I think there's a lot of game theory that you can war game out. And when you follow all these different thoughts to their logical end, letting this stuff play out from a narrative standpoint, these stories that are being told. I have said for a while, I said on Burning Bright's show, the narrative months ago, that I don't think the value of the narrative story being told is just for the quote unquote normies, for the public, for the benefit of the public record. I think it is also literally warfare, psychological warfare that's being used against people who have been trying to subjugate the American people for quite some time and have succeeded to a large degree. And I think weaponizing the story against them is effectively how you weaponize the public against them. And weaponizing the public against them is how you ensure longevity for the success of this movement and what I think we all are trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And, people who listen to my show or people who have watched DPH for a long time have probably heard me talk about whether or not the point of all this is waking up the normies. And I certainly believe that that's one of the purposes of the entire thing. But it's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, the idea that there is a scripted story and that it is our responsibility to follow along at the pace of that scripted story as it's delivered to the broader American public, if we are able to move ahead and continue pushing ahead. I think that that's like the baseline pace where we trudge along. That's what's tracking the mainstream media. I think that we are dealing not only with an awakening to truth, but the different ways that the truth has been manipulated for us. And one of those ways is through displacement in time, and that it's actually necessary. And I know you use the word accelerate a lot. It's necessary to try to catch up so that we can speed through these parts where we know that the revelations to the public are coming on something of a delayed timeline. But the more people that are able to push ahead so that they can make the proper decisions in their own lives, for their family, for their finances, et cetera, I think it's everybody's responsibility to do that, which is what, kind of bugs me about the idea that we should not be pointing out that the narratives being delivered are not entirely all the way there.
Yeah, it completely spot on. And, that kind of harkens back to the very recent post that President Trump made on Truth Social about intelligence is being able to predict the future, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, he kind of shapes the future. Go ahead. I didn't mean to.
No. That's exactly right. And, if you look at it from what does he mean by that? If you consider, the old saying that, being proactive versus being reactive, like reacting to things happening to you in your life in real time, not just from like the narrative war of story stuff, but just in your day-to-day life. That's a very inefficient way to live. The more efficient way to live is to be proactive and to anticipate what's going to happen next and then be able to prepare for it. And that's how you're going to be more successful. And if you take that lens and that framing and you apply it to the info war, that's what I think Trump is getting at, is that if we are able as a community, or if we're able to anticipate what's going to happen next, not from necessarily if we're able to anticipate what's going to happen next, we can prepare for it. We can anticipate it. We can even maybe thwart bad actors from trying to do something that is against our best interest. The second deployment of COVID comes to mind, where they were trying to do the COVID deployment and then everyone called them out for it. And then all of a sudden the story went away. The monkeypox thing was another one where they tried to do monkeypox and then people started to call them out for it. You've seen it happen over and over again in these more minor deployments where it gets called out. Last night on Liberty Den, I shared a Daily Mail article where the Daily Mail, of all people, of all outlets, was calling out the Blue Origin space thing as totally fake.
Well, to be fair, in the article, they were actually like, this is why all the conspiracy theorists are saying it's fake.
Yeah.
It's totally not.
Yeah. Yeah. But the fact that they felt the need to report on that just tells you how strong the zeitgeist is in that direction, where they're like, so many people on the internet are saying this is fake. We have to write a story about how everyone thinks it's fake. And at the very least, they're bringing it to the attention of normies who otherwise, maybe don't go on X and aren't like invested in this at all. And they're like, wait, people are saying this is fake. Like, I don't even really care about this story, but that's wild that people are saying this is fake. And the more that we're able to do that, the more we can keep ourselves accountable. We can keep the storytellers accountable. Because if you kind of consider anybody who has any measure of influence at any level, they kind of are a storyteller. They're able to put their thumb on the scale to a certain extent. And I'm not just talking about the corporate media. And being able to keep people accountable when they are being dishonest about stuff is really, really important. And I think the future, right?
Yes. So this, by the way, what's up on screen here, you brought up the Blue Origin thing. Somebody brought this to my attention today. And the clip was one of those that's been through 3 different format changes and you can barely see it. So this is the show. The show is called The Morning Show. Mm-hmm. And so it's Reese Witherspoon is a morning show host. And now she's getting blasted into space by the equivalent of Jeff Bezos on a rocket that looks exactly the same. And then they get up there and then the exact same pod is released with the big ass windows, and pretty soon they'll be floating around, and there's Jennifer Aniston, and oh look, and it's so incredible. So I mean,
it's the exact same thing that happened. That happened, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's crazy. The door thing, the whole thing is nuts. Not to linger on that too long. In terms of predicting the future, I think one of the most important things we can do, and first of all, that's one of the most valuable things in the world, right? If you're a venture capitalist, if you're a hedge fund manager, your entire job is figuring out what's going to happen in the future and then allotting investments in those proper places or pulling out of other places. And, we're not going to be able to nail it at even, it's more like kind of baseball where you can, like, if you bat 300 plus, you're like one of the most effective hitters in the game. You know what I mean? The idea is talking about potential possibilities so that we can think about what the probability of one of those happening will be, and then how to respond to it, seeing what extent we'd have to respond to it, how many of our own resources we might have to allot to it, and then trying to make smart decisions in a calculated way about what might be coming down the pike. And instead, we have this encouragement that we just should be tracking alongside the mainstream media. And to me, that has never made sense. Even if all of this was about waking up the normies, if the normies wake up faster than the program anticipates them waking up, that means there'll just be more momentum behind Donald Trump to do the things that he needs to do, or behind whoever else doing the things that they need to do. And so I've always figured if we want to get out of this thing as fast as possible, learning ahead is the best way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely spot on. And I'm glad you brought up the venture capitalist thing. I was at a Easter egg hunt today, and just talking to random people I was running into, a lot of guys I went to college with, and a couple of guys were venture capitalists, work in venture capital now. And I was talking with them just about really, really high level, general, normie level politics. And they were talking, one of them was saying how he was having lunch with another friend who's in finance, and the finance guy was making fun of the venture capitalist guy because he was like, none of, venture capital always fails more often than not, right? He's like all these little tiny companies never go anywhere. And then the venture capitalist guy's response was, well, hold on, without us, your industry wouldn't exist because the small companies wouldn't become players in the and like shareholders and make the public offerings and then actually be purchased into portfolios that you're going to manage. So you need us in order to survive and function. And he was telling me how his firm is now getting into like the technology stuff, which I thought was exciting to hear about. He was like, I got to put my hand on a hypersonic missile for the first time recently. It's like, that was exciting to hear that they're putting money now into technologies and the stuff that I think we talk about a lot here on Badlands. And that's exactly what he was getting at. Was we didn't use those exact words, but predicting the future. It's like being able to anticipate where things are going, not just from like a narrative psychological warfare aspect, but also like venture capital, finance, like the economy. I mean, all of those things, the lifeblood of how capital flows and circulates and cycles through. It's absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on.
Even if you're just someone who creates products or someone who's writing a book or writing a movie, and you're always better served if you're able to successfully predict trends based on what you're able to kind of glean from all available information sources. So before we get into what I want to talk about tonight, we are actually on a very special anniversary right now. This is the 250-year anniversary of Lexington and Concord. And I would be remiss not to mention that. And Gordon, I'll turn it over to you if you want to give a rundown, but I can also just give the preface here. I made the machine briefly summarize it. On April 19th, 1775, the quiet villages of Lexington and Concord became the crucible where the American Revolution was born, a moment immortalized as the shot heard round the world. Today, on the 250th anniversary, Americans gather to honor the courage, sacrifice, and ideals that ignited the nation's long struggle for independence. How patriotic and poetic. What a good job by the machine.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good job. I actually started my geopolitics show out yesterday with like a 15-minute rant about this. And kind of gave like the background. So I would encourage people to go listen to that if you want a more in-depth explanation. But the TLDR is basically on March 20th, 1775, the St. John's Church meeting happens in Virginia. And the Virginians were trying to figure out whether they were going to go to war. The Massachusetts folks had already determined they were going to go to war. And that was when Patrick Henry got up and gave the speech and convinced everyone in the room, yeah, we are going to go to war. And without Virginia, there is no revolution, because Virginia was what inspired all the other colonies to do it. They had the agriculture, they had the economy, they had the intellectuals, they had the military leaders. But without Massachusetts, the revolution probably never starts, because they had the Sons of Liberty. They had the accelerationists who were, the shit-eating wild men who were dressing up like Native Americans and getting on the boats of the East India Company and throwing the tea into the harbor and really like sticking the stick in the eye of the British Empire, and which led to the imperial occupation of Boston. And the clampdown is what then, drove more people towards the revolution. And then, so a month after the Patrick Henry speech, John Hancock, using self-made entrepreneur, wealthy man, not a warrior, but understood the need for kinetic conflict, invests his money into muskets, ammunition, gunpowder, stowed away in barns on people's farms outside of around Lexington and Concord. And when the British found out, they went to go seize the weapons. And so when Paul Revere gets on his horse and rides out of Boston to warn everybody the British are coming, what he meant was the British are coming to take the guns. And if it's now or never, if we don't go get the guns from the barn and line up and start shooting them, we will never have the opportunity again to do this. And so they decided to do it. And luckily, George Washington and the guys in Virginia chose to back them. They rode north. Bunker Hill, George Washington and the Virginians show up, and that's what led to the victory there. And had that not happened, had the Virginians not showed up and bailed out and saved the Massachusetts guys, they probably would have just been branded like a terrorist organization, hanged, and there wouldn't have been a revolution. So very, very big point, very, very big moment. And it wasn't just, it's really important to understand, it wasn't just about the American colonists rebelling. The shot heard around the world, the reason, in my opinion, that they call it that is that it launched in a worldwide rebellion against the British Empire, which is still, I think, in motion right now. I think we're still in rebellion against this city of London-based thing. So
yeah,
it's really
I agree
important
on
to look at it like
it,
that. Yeah. So
I certainly agree with that. That was excellent, man. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so let's get into some of the events in our world today, and we'll start with our bad guys theme. We'll start with some bad guys from clearly outside the tent, so that we don't trigger anybody right off the bat. You know how I'm very adverse to the triggerings. What is happening here? There we are. There we are. So yesterday, the COVID.gov website redirected to this lab leak, the true origins of COVID-19, with Donald Trump right there. And the website goes through quite a bit of this case, but I'll just go through the top part here. The proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 originated naturally. And through here are the steps in the logical process. The virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature. Data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events. Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research, gene altering, and organism supercharging at inadequate biosafety levels. The Wuhan Institute of Virology's researchers were sick with COVID-like symptoms in the fall of 2019, months before COVID-19 was discovered at the wet market. And by nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced, but it hasn't. So it gives a little map here, goes down through some of the key concepts to understand, like gain-of-function research. They mention EcoHealth Alliance, the NIH. Then we get into Anthony Fauci and the fake president's fake pardon, HHS obstruction, EcoHealth obstruction, and it just keeps going. And all of this is stuff that people like us could not stop discussing throughout 2020 and beyond.
yes, exactly. And you know, I think I really enjoy looking at game theory and trying to weigh and measure why President Trump takes certain actions, adopts certain narratives, says certain things a certain way, because he does sometimes say things that aren't necessarily true or not necessarily accurate, and he does it for a very specific reason. I think I was on DPH with y'all a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Steve Bannon, and we were talking about how Bannon has really leaned into the whole CCP is like are the bad guys angle, but he's used it as a vehicle to educate his audience on the financial crimes and like how the deep state, whatever you want to call it, has robbed us financially. And so people basically don't spend time. His audience doesn't waste time arguing on who the bad guys are. They're learning what the bad guys are doing. And then, you know, later on, if they learn that the bad guys aren't quite what they were told they are, that is easier to adjust because they understand what the crimes are. And I think that's a really effective way of educating people, because a lot of times I think people get caught in the doorway trying to get into the info war because they can't agree on who the bad guys are. They can't agree on, you know, a general premise, and therefore they fail to get to the next step and like level up and learn how they're being subjugated, why they're being subjugated, which I think are important things to understand if you're going to subvert the subjugation and ultimately defeat it. Pass back to you.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a well-made point, and there's definitely something to that. My only hesitation when it comes to that point is if we are telling people, hey, you've been totally hoodwinked. It's actually this way, and that way is also a hoodwinking. That's when we're getting ourselves into real trouble. And, it's definitely good that we are moving away from the natural origin thing. This will introduce more people to the idea that it's one step closer to the suggestion that the viral pandemic was released from a lab intentionally. But the end goal, as far as I'm concerned, is the understanding that the pandemic itself and the narrative about the pandemic was a hoax. I'm not saying nothing happened physically to people. I know it did. It's possible that it was a poisoning. It's possible that it's energy interference. It's possible that it's a bunch of things. What's highly unlikely is that a viral pandemic of the nature we were told COVID possessed came into our country in the fall of 2019 and then wasn't transmissible and wasn't deadly for 5 months in our midst until we started making mitigation steps like masking and social distancing and lockdowns and the rest of it that we know didn't work. And so there's got to be a way to get beyond this. Now, I have no doubt that the CCP and elements in our government were engaged in biomedical research to create bioweapons, specifically maybe to create bioweapons that would target certain people or certain genetics. I have no, I'm not trying to suggest that these people aren't doing the research and aren't evil, but to say that that's actually what infected our population with a real disease that replaced the flu and no one died at home, no one fell over and died in the streets. It was only after the hospital protocol or death caused by something else that was marked with COVID for a government payment. The entire thing was so convoluted and such a lie on all levels that this to me is a half measure. And I want to be able to move beyond that and not convince people, oh, this was actually what happened.
Yeah, no, it's very, very well said. And it's something that I've actually been talking about lately, not necessarily the COVID narrative, but just the half measures, like because I do feel like the half measures is like a negotiated compromise with the bad guys, which doesn't feel moral and right to me. So I'm hoping that it is a step to a different inning, and rather than it being the final iteration of where we're going to settle on this. So it's very, very well made point. The other potential explanation, for lack of a better word, that for COVID is the rebranding of the flu. You kind of alluded to that a little bit, but was it just the rebranding of the flu? Because we didn't have any flu deaths that year, which is absolutely asinine, insane. And so I do hope that the general strategy from the Trump administration with this is to weaponize the narrative against the media and the corporate media and the quote unquote experts, the trusted experts from the various organizations that basically seized control of humanity. I mean, not just American society, but all societies, and imposed its will in the most draconian and tyrannical way. So I do hope that that's what they're going to, that the goal here is to weaponize the narrative against them. And then eventually we can have the conversation about everything that you just listed out, because it does feel like a half measure to go along with what in some ways does feel like a central narrative. It does feel like this is like I don't want to say uniparty narrative, but kind of like this is an authoritative narrative from an authoritative source. Like it came from a Wuhan lab, because they were talking about that in 2020. It just kind of got brushed over,
Yeah, that was I would call that the central counter narrative. So you have the central narrative. There's a very deadly pandemic. We need to take all these mitigation steps. If you don't go along with it, you're killing grandma. This all had a natural origin in the wet market. And then the central counter narrative was that there's a real disease. you need to take mitigation steps. If you don't, you're killing grandma. But it originated in the lab, right? So you still accept the vast majority and all of the critical central narrative elements. They don't care if you believe the natural origin or you believe the lab leak. They care if you believe there's a real disease that needs to be mitigated in the exact ways they say, and that you're going to trust the experts, you're going to trust the science, and you're going to listen to your government and support whatever it does. And so you have the central narrative and the central counter narrative operating in unison to appeal to all of the people who might not believe one or the other. And we see that controlled opposition dynamic present in all of the top level narrative rollouts, and even some of the tiny ones too. There will be multiple brands of the same thing on offer from them because they know that they don't have a way to make everybody agree with one thing, but they do have a way to divide people and keep them divided about 50-50. So they keep fighting about everything. They believe in the polls. They believe in the election results, and the whole system just continues to chug along.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's really important to challenge when these things come out, even when it comes out of the Trump administration, is to challenge it and to say, wait a minute, guys, wait a minute. It's cool if the normies now want to debate about what exactly the pandemic was and challenge what the corporate media was telling us, and they're gonna take their mask off finally after whatever 5 years and stop social distancing if people are even still doing that. But since we were already talking about this 5 years ago, should be at the tip of the spear, pushing back and saying, is this actually what happened? Because I actually think that all this is bullshit, and people were talking about this 5 years ago, but I don't know if this is actually the truth. So we need to get to the truth of what exactly happened and adjudicate the truth, and not just be spoon-fed something from any authority. I don't care what authority that is, including the Trump White House. We need more. And this is not, like you said, it's a half measure. It's an absolute half measure. And we can war game, like we can sit here and we can war game why they would do things a certain way. And I can make arguments for the uniparty's desire to see the United States go to war with China. Like that would be a reason that you would do this. That would be a very strong incentive, especially with everything happening with Taiwan and the tariff war and all that. I mean, this is a great opportunity to capitalize on, the division or the reckoning between China and America. Everything happening from a narrative standpoint with the tariffs, to then throw some more salt in the wound and say, oh yeah, by the way, do you remember the Wuhan lab leak theory? Do you remember the whole COVID thing? Like what China did to us, America, which I don't think any of us believe. I don't think anybody believes that it was like China attacking America. I think that's what they want us to think. If anything, if this were true, it 100% was the U.S. government or bad elements in the U.S. government attacking the American people, not because it came out of a lab, but because of everything they did as a result of that narrative to us, where they locked down our society and destroyed our economy.
I'm 100% on board with that. It's an interesting kind of news item to put in people's holiday weekend. A lot of people are going to be around family members that they see a couple of times a year. And is this going to come up at dinner tables? They often talk about things being argued about over Thanksgiving dinner. This is right in the wheelhouse for those kinds of discussions. So maybe people advance beyond that. And, if somebody was to tell me, like, okay, I see that it wasn't that, like, maybe the natural origin thing was kind of dumb. Like, at that point, I'm going to be like, good. Well, that's good. But you know what? I actually think that it's even worse than they're telling you. It's not just that the government would do this and they would lie about it, they would cover it up, or that something could be intentionally released and that they would actually do this to humanity, that there are people out there like that. And I always want to take it to the next step beyond. It's like, okay, you've gotten to like a baseline point where now you don't trust the thing you trusted before, which means you're searching. But like, let's go all the way. Yes, at least just to plant the seeds so that if the thought ever arises again, they'll be like, okay, or if any sign comes from the world, they'll be like, all right, I understand. Maybe that makes sense. Because to me, at the end of this, you got to make it so that the regime can't use the pandemic playbook anymore. I don't want any more pandemic playbooks ever being operative and ever being convincing to people. And the lab leak story, the lab leak explanation doesn't get us there. And that bothers the hell out of me, man, because we do need to get there. We know that the thing was scripted. We know that the thing was war gamed. We could see the narrative effort on TV every day, streamed into our living rooms. We saw the public shame campaign and the psychological manipulation. All of that was planned. It wasn't an accidental response to a real disease in the world. It was something that was entirely programmed.
Yeah. And it's really, really sick when you stop and you think about the people who were doing this to us were also the people, like the fear mongering are also the people who became like the trusted sources that that all these people were turning to every day, being like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And it was really sad to watch, like people just become completely prostrate themselves to these ridiculous authorities. If the place where we are right now is that everyone can agree, like we can argue over whether it was a lab leak or the whole thing was a hoax, because I think both of those narratives are so sinister. They're so sinister that, the U.S. government was doing really, really dangerous viral research that was so dangerous they had to offshore it in China because they couldn't do it on American soil, so they had to do it in some sketchy lab in China, and then they intentionally released it from the lab. That's pretty evil. Making up a hoax, like just making the whole thing up, like out of thin air, in order to subjugate the entire world, or at least the American people, that is extremely evil. Which one is more evil? I mean, you decide, but that's where the debate should be. It should be, these people are such evil pieces of shit. These are such evil bastards that they would do A or B, and therefore we shouldn't listen to a single word these people say, regardless of where we go from here and how we decide what actually happened in 2020. We all should agree with, like, the normies should agree with us that we should never again listen to these people ever again. And the next time they try to scare us, we should look at them and say, straight to jail. That meme.
It's true. Like, never listening to them again is the solution. This is one of those things, it's an element of the information war. There are some real events that cannot be prevented from our knowledge or even necessarily foreknowledge, but the next pandemic can be prevented strictly through our disbelief. That's it. That's all it requires. If no one believes the pandemic bullshit anymore, then there are no more successful pandemics. There's only monkeypox, and that did nothing, and, to kind of bring us back to where we were a little bit earlier in talking about the bad guys and looking out for stuff that maybe is coming from, what people believe at least is our own side. It really, and along with the potential possibilities and the rest of it, it's really important to question, like, hey, what if it's not actually the best elements around Trump pushing XYZ forward? What if that is not Trump's exact intent being executed perfectly the way he wants? What if there's something else going on in there? What if there's some uniparty right Con Inc. stuff interfering with that, changing up the messaging, diverting this thing off its course? Because if no one questions it because we're all just too busy cheerleading, then no one is prepared for if it's the bad thing. Like, do we just really want to assume at all times that Donald Trump, in what he's saying, can be taken at a literal surface level, and that we have to do that? Or even worse, that he's put someone in a position and now we have to listen to that person all the time? Because it seems like that's what we're told.
Yeah. Yeah, this is I've spent a lot of time thinking about this for even before Trump was back. Why? Why would you do something like that? I think people have a really hard time reconciling the idea or just entertaining the idea that Donald Trump would put somebody around him that wasn't just a complete loyalist or wasn't the best person for that job or for any reason other than he's trying to accomplish the exact task of whatever that title is, right? Like he has an ulterior motive to putting a person in a specific place. And I'll remind everyone of the John Bolton appointment from the first term where he joked about last year on the campaign trail. The reason I brought John Bolton in is to go to these meetings with these international leaders and keep him in the corner like a chained Rottweiler and be like, hey, don't make me like pull out my Rottweiler and let him just go monkey on y'all. Like I have this crazy son of a bitch over here with the mustache, and I will unleash him if you don't play ball with me. It's like that's a negotiation tactic, and that's him disrespecting John Bolton because he recognizes that John Bolton is an unhinged psychopath. So, I do think that there's a lot of value to that. I think that going back to the conversations I was having today with the venture capitalist guys and the finance guys are freaking out right now because of the tariffs. The venture capitalist guys were saying the tariffs are amazing. We love the tariffs, even though there's like this, the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off, because we're investing in small cap companies in America. So this is great for us. The finance guys are doing mid and large cap companies that are international. And, you saw the stock market drop and go up and they don't know what the hell is going on. It's chaos for them. Right. And that's the point. I mean, when you look at what Trump's doing, it's chaos everywhere. There is that 4chan post I saw you posted on your Telegram of somebody explaining what Trump was doing. I thought that was a pretty brilliant post. I don't know if it's worth looking at or not, but I do think that what Trump is doing like everywhere right now, not just with the economy, but he's doing this fog of war. He's creating chaos. Why? We'll go back to the Truth Social post. Intelligence is the ability to predict the future. If he is sowing chaos everywhere, nobody can predict the future and nobody can tell what's going to happen next. And if nobody can tell what's going to happen next, there is no intelligence. There is nobody who like the playing field is level in a lot of ways, except for the guy maybe sowing the chaos.
I love that. I think you're exactly right about that. Let's take a quick break. We have some ads from Rumble tonight. And when Rumble is supporting us, we like to support Rumble. And these are actually our old pals at TACRite, longtime Badlands sponsor. Military night vision tech released to the public. Our partners at TACRite are giving night vision binoculars at 50% off today. All you have to do is visit TACRiteNightVision.com and claim yours for 50% off. Visiting the page today automatically activates your discount. Similar military devices sell for over $4,000. However, TACRite was able to make similar technology available to the public for under $200. These things are flying off the shelves. Last time it got released on Rumble, it sold out and took 3 months to get it back in stock. So order today and it'll ship out in 24 hours from New York. Get your night vision today. Go get some TACRites. And that was wonderful. I had a great time doing that. I hope you had a great time listening. So let's stick with some appointments and how quickly these appointments can change and go awry. And the cheerleaders were like, wow, the congressional hearing whistleblower is now the acting commissioner of the IRS. That's amazing. I guess that was exciting for people that got really into this television story. And then just like 3 days later, this is the New York Post, IRS Hunter Biden whistleblower Gary Shapley ousted as acting commissioner. And I'm just going to go through a little bit of this, Gordon, unless you have any initial comments.
No, please.
Okay. Gary Shapley, who became a folk hero to conservatives when he revealed the Justice Department played favorites in its investigation of former first son Hunter Biden, was ousted from his role as acting IRS commissioner just days after being elevated to the position, sources familiar with the shakeup told the Post Friday. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has replaced Shapley with Deputy Treasury Secretary Michael Falkender, following a power struggle with key Trump advisor Elon Musk over the appointment. Trust must be brought back to the IRS, and I am fully confident that the Deputy Treasury Secretary, Michael Falkender, is the right man for the moment, Bessent said. He also said Gary Shapley's passion and thoughtfulness for approaching ways by which to create durable and lasting reforms at the IRS is essential to our work, and he remains among my most important senior advisors at Treasury as we work together to rethink and reform the IRS. So it's not that there's anything wrong with Gary Shapley. He didn't do a bad job. None of that. The story and the drama that ensued, I'll let MSNBC tell everybody about that, and then courtesy of War Room, and then Gordon, I'll turn it over to you.
NBC News has learned the acting commissioner of the IRS, Gary Shapley, is being removed amid a power struggle at the highest levels of the White House. Let's go right to NBC's Yamiche Alcindor, who's covering this story for us. Yamiche, what's happening here? What can you tell us?
What we know is that the acting head of the IRS, as you said, is being replaced by the Treasury Secretary because the Treasury Secretary believes that he was installed, the acting IRS Secretary was installed behind his back, essentially, because Elon Musk wanted him there. He complained, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, to President Trump, saying that he did not want that acting IRS Secretary to be there, IRS commissioner be there, and as a result, his replacement is going to be coming in. He's the Deputy Treasury Secretary. This is all really, in some ways, feeling like maybe inside baseball. The big bottom line here is that you have a power struggle between Elon Musk and an agency head, and this is really coming as we know that Elon Musk has really had issues with a number of agency heads, including Marco Rubio at the Secretary of State and other heads of agencies. That's him and the Department of Government Efficiency have essentially tried to take over roles and taken over decisions that agency heads are making. Now, the White House is out with a statement that they provided to the New York Times. That statement says, in part, from Caroline Levitt. She said, in part, "It's no secret President Trump has put together a team of people who are incredibly passionate about the issues impacting our country. Disagreements are a normal part of any healthy policy process, and ultimately everyone knows they serve at the pleasure of the president." So really interesting that the White House in some ways is actually acknowledging that this was a power struggle. And it shows you that there's going to be in some ways more to come of this as Elon Musk and Doge continue to make decisions.
And so it's more Elon drama with another high-level Trump official. The week prior, we got Elon Musk versus Peter Navarro, and that to me read very similar to Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy with the H-1B things. You draw a lot of people out. Now he's going to war with Scott Bessent, apparently. Laura Loomer commenting about how Bessent was a Soros guy. Elon then responding like, wow, or whatever he did. And anyway, go ahead. Sorry. I think you're muted right now.
I'm muted. Wow. Yep. I didn't know that, Laura. Tell me that for the first time. I've never heard that before. I'm sure Elon's like, I did not know he worked for George Soros. I view this as friction. Trump loves friction. I think if we accept the narrative at its face value, like at the surface available, and as they acknowledge in the clip, the White House said, yes, this did happen. This friction, this disagreement did happen. It's healthy. It's part of the process. I think Trump likes to have the two opposing voices in the room when he's making a decision. He wants to hear the two different sides. He wants to watch people argue. I learned this even more when I went and watched the few episodes of The Apprentice to prepare for the Book of Trump episode, where I expected him to kind of like gloss over the drama, like the petty drama, and him to be like, guys, we're not here to bicker. And he'd be like, oh, no. Oh, that's interesting. What do you think about that? Like, he was pouring fuel on the bickering, and he wanted to watch people bicker. He wanted to see how people handled it, not just to hear the substance of their argument, but to see how they handled themselves. Could they comport themselves under the pressure of being like called out in front of a room full of people? And he talked about on the show how he liked to see people in that situation and how they responded to it. So I think that's a big part of it. I also think that this is the future of all political discourse, is that we should be hashing everything out. We should be arguing about stuff. We should be engaging in civil discourse. Nothing should be taken for granted. Nothing should be taken at face value as, oh, well, that's obviously, gospel now, and we can never deliberate that ever again. I do think that there's game theory stuff going on, but we'll get to that in a little bit with some of the other characters. But the friction causes conflict, and I think conflict drives resolution, and that is storytelling 101.
I think you're absolutely right about the friction, and allowing the conflict to play out generates additional information. You find out where people's loyalties are, and all of that is invaluable to Donald Trump because, and this is one of the things that makes people uncomfortable, but I don't think we've seen our last betrayal, somebody that we thought was definitely on our side, and then find out, oh, that person maybe isn't on our side. I don't think we're done with that process. And because we're not done with that process, because we saw everything the first time around, we saw like not half, but a big portion of the Republican Party and Republican voters go anti-Trump throughout the fake primaries for Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or whoever else ran. I don't think we're done seeing that kind of element in our midst, which means we should be extra cautious about like turning off our discernment when it comes to anybody. I mean, yes, we'll give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt all the time, but beyond that, like we should be at least a little suspicious.
Yeah. I think we need to be suspicious of everybody, and just treat everybody at face value. Really, it's like, let's hear what they say, let's see what they do, judge them by the merits of their actions, and a pattern of behavior forms. I was telling people on my show last week, I was explaining how I analyze geopolitics. I look at the high level narratives. I really don't care what's happening on the ground, like reported on the ground, because how can I know if that stuff's true? How can I know if what's being told to us on the ground in any situation, whether it's a war zone or anything else? I don't know if what's being reported is true, but sure. I can validate how the high level political narratives are being deployed, how the politicians and the figures are responding to it. Are they forwarding the narratives that the uniparty or the corporate media are forwarding? Are they exploiting those narratives for their own personal gain? Are they promoting peace? Are they promoting war? Are they aligned with like the sovereignty, multipolar world order? Or are they pushing for the hegemony? Are they pushing for the uniparty? So over a long enough time scale, people will tell you who they are through their actions, and not just their actions, but their words. And sometimes those are the same things, like in a narrative warfare.
Yeah. And I mean, the other part of it is just, are they telling the truth? Like, yes. Is this person being honest to the best of his or her ability? And, when we see things that are being presented as stuff we just found out that we've known for years and years, well, that's clearly not telling the truth, because I can't imagine that someone in a position of high level information access is finding things out at a slower pace than we are. That just doesn't make sense to me. So that's always presented problems as far as I'm concerned. In the kind of Treasury world, we heard some interesting things from Scott Bessent about what the Treasury's tools were if Jerome Powell declined to lower interest rates. Donald Trump's been going after him a bit. And then this was yesterday. I think it was John who pointed out earlier in the week that there was that one of the potential plans that they were thinking about, and maybe you guys actually talked about this on Wednesday, was naming a replacement for Powell before Powell's term expired, because it would, first of all, create that tension. There would be the guy. It would make Powell kind of a lame duck in some sense. And then CNN had this out yesterday, and I think maybe this seems like it might be the guy. Trump wants to fire Fed Chair Powell. Kevin Warsh might be the one to replace him. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, and you can go ahead if you do. And
no, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me scroll down here. This is where I want to highlight, and there we are. The leading contender to lead the U.S. central bank under Trump, whether at the end of Powell's term in May 2026 or earlier, reportedly appears to be Kevin Warsh, a former Fed governor who previously was under consideration to be Trump's Treasury Secretary for the president's second term and was a candidate for the top job at the Fed during Trump's first term. CNN previously reported that Warsh was again on Trump's shortlist to become Fed chair this time around once Powell's time is up. In fact, Trump's selection of Scott Bessent to lead the Treasury Department was seen by many as a way to leave Warsh open for an eventual appointment as Fed chair. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Bloomberg earlier this week that the administration will start interviewing candidates for Powell's successor sometime in the fall, and with speculation swirling over whether Trump will try to oust Powell before his term ends, Bessent said that monetary policy is a jewel box that's got to be preserved. Just a couple more segments down here, if I can locate them from my notes. This I thought was interesting. In an interview with Fox Business ahead of the Fed's latest policy meeting last month, Warsh said the turmoil sparked by Trump's tariff war indicates an economy that is transitioning. The president inherited a fiscal and economic and regulatory mess, and it's going to take a little digging out to be on a stronger platform for growth, he said. Rome wasn't built in a day, so this will take some time. And he also noted that the inflation, he said inflation is a choice, and the Fed has made a lot of bad choices over these last several years. The president has to take matters into his own hands and try to kill inflation by reducing government spending. And so it seems like we are headed for a showdown, that Powell is going to be removed one way or another, or at least made a lame duck in that way. But it seems like they're going to remove him. And then we have multiple battles. The first being over whether or not the Fed is an independent agency, whether the theory of independent agencies holds any sway. I don't believe it does. I imagine you don't believe so either. Yeah. And then the big reveal would be, oh, wait, the Fed's not part of our government?
Yeah. And actually, it's even worse than that. The Fed is a collection of private banks that are based in London. That's actually the truth. And it's even HSBC, which is supposed to be like a Hong Kong-based bank, is actually a London-based bank. And yeah, it's really bad. It's really sinister, and the public is mostly unaware that of how it all. I'm sorry.
And by London, you mean the city of London proper, not like the British government or anything like that. This is in the city of London, the British crown, and, you know, Empire of the City. You can go back through this. The crown has been controlling the world for our entire lifetimes and still are, but continue.
Yeah. It's a 1 mile by 1 mile square in London, the city of London, as to your point, and its own sovereign entity, as I understand it. And that's where it all kind of traces back to. And its tentacles are everywhere. And we've heard it deployed in many different forms, because people have been talking about the Commonwealth, right? The Commonwealth, these different countries. Canada is one of them. Greenland's another one. Guyana, which is that proxy state next to Venezuela, is another one. So they're everywhere. The other ones escape me, but anyway, I digress. Trump has been teasing for weeks now that he wants to see Powell lower the interest rates. We don't know what's actually going to happen here, but ultimately that's just narrative warfare, exposing the Fed and what the Fed is and how the Fed was created. I think that's the conversation that needs to happen. The creature from Jekyll Island conversation needs to happen. It needs to be brought out to the forefront. There's probably a number of steps that occur before that conversation happens out in the open. But hopefully this is a step in that direction.
I am with you on that. Let's get into some more bad guys. And first, we'll do bad guys on the outside. And then this story kind of layers right into potential bad guys on the inside. So there was this post on X, formerly Twitter, today from Real Robert. I don't know this account. Adam Schiff conspired with CIA John Brennan to overthrow the United States government in 2016, and then, right out of a small room in Langley, covertly conspired with CIA Director Mike Pompeo to overthrow the sitting president of the United States. Declassify the Central Intelligence Agency, and you will find Senator Adam Schiff in a maximum security prison where he belongs. And they linked to this video from James O'Keefe.
Is this the Flynn post? You're not sharing your screens, just FYI. But
oh no,
it's all right. It's all right.
All right, hold on.
I didn't know if you had intended to, and I should have cut you off.
Apologies. Yeah. No, that's good. But here's the James O'Keefe.
The first of the intelligence community's surveillance targets appeared to be a former Defense Intelligence Agency, that's DIA head, and would-be Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Another target was staffer George Papadopoulos. In 2018, HPSCI, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, released a 243-page report clearing Trump of allegations that he and his team colluded with Russia to interfere with the 2016 election. However, sources close to the House Permanent Select Committee, led by Adam Schiff, covertly continued working out of a small room in Langley, and he had access to raw logs and communications from agencies like the CIA and the National Security Council. The first of
So that has always been, as far as I'm concerned, just the most obvious proof that there has been a coup against President Donald Trump for the entire 10 years that he's been in public life. They have been trying to subvert and destroy him the entire time. They did so to rig an election, and then they kept the thing going and spied on him in the White House. And I don't know, I guess we're having a rerun of this story to bring it back to the public, which of course is good. I'll let you comment on that, and then we'll get to the General Flynn post.
Yeah, well, this is this reminds me of Allen Dulles. When Allen Dulles was fired by JFK as the director of the CIA, it's understood, or at least as I understand it, he continued to maintain an office at Langley and continue to work at Langley. And then after JFK was killed, Allen Dulles was put in charge of the Warren Commission, which was tasked with investigating the JFK assassination. So, draw your own conclusions, but it sounds like Allen Dulles was probably involved in the assassination of JFK. So this sounds like kind of a repeat, like a sequel, a rerun rather of that situation. But it is interesting that General Flynn's calling out Pam Bondi. We've been calling out Pam Bondi for several weeks now. She's had a number of kind of head scratching moves, and
maybe Cash Patel as well.
Yeah, maybe Cash as well.
Let's go through this, and then I'll hand it back over to you. But Steve Bannon was making the same point on War Room earlier this week, and he said, he has had Cash on a million times. He loves Cash Patel. Was pushing for Cash to be FBI director for years, so he's on board with all that. But he was saying, hey, where are you, Cash? Where are you, Pam Bondi? Let's go with this. So General Flynn wrote this evening on X, formerly Twitter, can we get anyone to go arrest, at least question these people, please? No more MMA matches, no more Fox News appearances. Let's get serious about those who tried and are still trying to destroy America. Thank you, James O'Keefe. He tagged Pam Bondi, he tagged Cash, and then said, if there is even a hint, and let's be serious, there is a tidal wave of evidence, but even a hint of conspiracy to overthrow 45, now 47, then an investigation is warranted and detention for questioning is imperative. And it's hard to argue with the general on any of those points.
Yeah, absolutely. And, General Flynn's son has been calling out Pam Bondi for quite some time. She goes on Fox News every single night. He calls her. I see him call her out like every single night for doing it, for being more invested in like the TV narratives, like the TV narrative deployments, than actually executing things that are more tangible. Now, the arguments can be made that investigations are happening and they're not going to reveal anything until it's all wrapped up, and that's 100% true. But those things are impossible for us to verify. So demanding accountability and demanding action, I think, is kind of our job as citizens, whatever you want to call us, activists in this information war, digital soldiers, maybe that's what General Flynn would call us. And now that General Flynn's done that, joined his son in calling out Pam Bondi, maybe that's social permission for everybody to kind of do the same, and just not necessarily targeting Pam Bondi, but just in general, calling for accountability, regardless of who the person in the White House is, and asking questions, and not just expecting that everything that's happening is the right thing that needs to happen, and everything that's happening is the moral correct choice. I think maybe pushing back and getting that friction is what's going to drive resolution.
Yeah, I'm down with all that. I would also add, we're in a phase of trying to win. I believe Donald Trump has an obvious and overwhelming mandate. I believe that is proven in various live events and other kind of indirect means on a weekly basis at this point. But we need to get a public mandate behind actually going and arresting these members of the deep state, the people who were involved in the Russia hoax and all of the rest of it. Countless arrests need to be made. I would say thousands, maybe tens of thousands, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than that, to be honest. But even just within our government and the bureaucratic layers and the kind of outer deep state when it comes to law firms and some of the corporations, the political parties, et cetera, thousands of people. And so the public is going to have to be fully on board with that for that thing to move forward. Now, you can't have, potentially in that scenario, you can't have then Kash Patel and Pam Bondi looking like they are actually waging political prosecutions of their opponents. So they're going a different direction until the public demands for those things to come. And then at that point, hopefully we'll see them. On the other side of that, I think you're exactly right. It absolutely is up to people like us to be pushing for more, and not in a way that says the Trump administration is screwing us over. What, he actually is on the bad team. That's not the move. I would never be a proponent of that because I don't believe that that's what they're doing. But that doesn't mean we can't push for the right things to happen and say, hey, we respect these people. We want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but we still got to move forward on these.
Yep. Got to move forward on it. I mean, we need to have accountability. I mean, what happened with the whole Epstein files thing, guys? I mean, the Epstein file thing was a complete, unmitigated dumpster fire of a disaster. Now, if the point was to make those people walking out of that White House look like assholes, mission accomplished. I mean, absolutely. But there's still questions that are raised on Pam Bondi because she came out after that moment and said, yeah, I have the files on my desk. Like, I'm looking at them right now. Like, I'm reviewing them. And then we never heard anything after that. And it's like now, and then we went on to the JFK thing, which, we got a bunch of new JFK files. That was cool, but we didn't get all of them.
And then RFK this week, nobody talked about it.
Yeah. And now Una Panuna Luna is now talking about UFOs. So it's like now we're on to the UFO thing. It's like we are which is like ADHD of D class, right? And we can't actually finish one D class before we move on to the next one. And it's like, is that the most organized way to do it?
I don't know about that. But because you Candyman'd her. When you call her name, you got to get a Nuna Panuna in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I don't know who the next person on your list is. I don't know if it's Waltz. I know in the list you sent me, it looks like National Security Council might be next. You might have something else to say on Pam Bondi, but I do think that this kind of gets us to the point of because I see people in the chat saying Trump's not a dummy. He knows what he's doing. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking at this, like, why would Trump put somebody in place who doesn't know what they're doing or isn't accomplishing what he wants them to accomplish? That's the wrong way to look at it. Maybe what Trump is trying to do is he's trying to highlight certain, not necessarily people, but elements. He's trying to highlight dynamics that are at play and maybe create that friction, because we need that friction. Because remember what the Republican Party did to Donald Trump in January 2021. They went along with the fake Joe Biden presidency. Without the Republican Party's consent, that does not happen. But guess what happened, guys? They went along with it. And a lot of the people who are in the administration right now were part of that op that jumped in bed with Joe Biden and said Joe Biden's the president.
A lot of people out there in the general public went along with it too. And, the other thing is we're seeing people being removed from DOD and I think the National Security Council. And there's a whole lot of career federal government employees in all of these departments and in all of these agencies who are holdovers from prior administrations. And maybe Donald Trump's got all the intel on all of them. I at least allow for the possibility that that's the case and that a slower game is just being played. But there also just might be other layers of deep state bad actors that need to be discovered. And so there has to be the process of discovery. And so we go through these stories and we go through some of these scandals, and he allows the thing to take place because he wants to see who's who. And, in terms of fantasy team and people that even he's appointed, there are people that we know that he has come straight out and said, this person was recommended to me. This person was, I was advised to give this person this position. There's probably a lot of that going on as a process of negotiation. He gives the other side a lot of what it wants. He sees how it goes. And they do bad things. And he says, hey, well, you know what? I gave them a shot and they did this bad thing. So now I need to replace them. All of that seems totally plausible to me. And none of it suggests that Donald Trump is a dummy who's getting the wool pulled over his eyes.
Yeah, exactly. The one that really comes to mind that just came out yesterday was the Mark Levin. I know I sent you that article, and it's not one we have to really spend a lot of time on, but Trump created this kind of, sounds very silly, but here, I'll share my screen. It says, Fox News, Trump announces a conservative media star, GOP governor, and others for Homeland Security Advisory Council. The president said the four individuals will do an incredible job. And the exact quote is, I'm proud to announce the formation of my revamped Homeland Security Advisory Council, which is comprised of top experts in their field who are highly respected by their peers. It is a big honor to serve on HSAC, and I know the new members, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, Mark Levin, Bo Dietl, and Joseph Gruters will do an incredible job, the president declared in a post on Truth Social. Under Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem's leadership, HSAC will work hard on developing new policies and strategies that will help us secure our border, deport illegal criminal thugs, stop the flow of fentanyl and other illegal drugs that are killing our citizens, and make America safe again. Congratulations to all. So what's interesting about this is a few things. Is number one, Kristi Noem has been treating her job like an Instagram influencer. You and I think are in agreement that the Department of Homeland Security is a totally illegitimate agency that was spun out of the Patriot Act, which was created under false pretenses, a false flag attack against America in the form of 9/11, which is, of course, an inside job. And so it shouldn't exist. If this were a serious deployment, these people would be reporting to Tom Homan, because I'm pretty sure Homan's the one running border security. Instead, they're, Mark Levin apparently is coming up with guidance and policy decisions to pass on to Kristi Noem. None of it makes any sense. And to make it even more strange, Mark Levin has been railing Donald Trump for a while now over the whole Putin-Ukraine thing. Putin, he hates Putin. He thinks I've been posting this weeks ago on my Telegram and on X account, just screenshotting his kind of unhinged X post where he is frothing at the mouth because at the idea that we would even sit down and speak face to face with Putin, let alone cut a deal with him. And that we should basically fight to the last man against Russia. And then now, of course, we'll probably get to the Iran thing later. With the whole Iran-Israel thing happening, we know Levin is a huge Zionist. And it kind of feels like what Trump is doing here is he's neutering Levin. Levin, none of us watch Fox News. I mean, none of us respect Fox News, but Trump seems to hold a special place in his heart for Fox News. Maybe it's the fact that guys like Levin have maintain a really small audience of elites, influential people. I don't know, but it seems like by putting Levin in this position, it's going to make it really hard for Levin to come out now that he's part of the administration and attack the administration for things the administration are doing. And if you take that framing and you apply it to guys like Rubio, Waltz, establishment uniparty Republicans who are in the administration at very, very high positions, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. You put those guys in the administration. If they're not in the administration, maybe the uniparty is running subversive ops out in the open against the administration and attacking the administration and trying to subvert it. If they are in the administration, they're a lot less likely to do that out in the open. I mean, they're probably still going to do it covertly, but they can't openly criticize the administration when it's their administration. So I think it's a little bit of narrative shielding. That's part of the game theory. There's other things that I think are part of the game theory that we'll get to with the specific stories we're about to talk about.
Yeah. And I agree with you about the Levin thing, especially that it comes at the same time that the New York Times ran the article this week about how Trump made it so that Israel couldn't strike Iran. And, if you are one of the neocons like Mark Levin is, and Zionist Supremo like Mark Levin is, then that's going to be really upsetting to you. And again, we have the narrative for weeks and weeks about anti-Semitism efforts. Trump is, there's the whole movement that suggests Trump is doing whatever Israel says. Then Netanyahu comes to Washington again. Donald Trump makes him look a little foolish again. And then he puts Mark Levin on this board. How's Levin going to go on TV and scream and yell about Donald Trump? I think the point about Rubio is exactly the same thing. You have the GOP establishment and elite. You have the neocon element represented there. Their interests are represented. At some point, because the interests are maintaining a state of constant war, well, that's not going to work in a Trump administration. So you end up having their guy be the one that has to tell the world, I don't know if it's if more war is the way we're going to go. And that I would think takes the wind out of their sails. I think it's a very smart play to be playing these guys back against their own cause. Are you going to serve the country and carry out the president's orders? Because if you're not, we've got this slew of businessmen, as you say, ready to lead the other side of the negotiations.
Yeah. And as we get into the national security stuff, real quick, share my screen. I can't recall if we talked about this on Wednesday night. I've been on. Let's come
back to the Russia thing.
Yeah. Just that the only thing is that this story highlights the divide that you just mentioned. On one side, you have the businessmen, and on one side, you have the neocons. So just putting that in everyone's mind, and then now let's go look at the national security stuff.
Yeah, cool. We'll definitely get back to the Russia thing too.
Yep.
We'll do this little run, and then we'll close out on Russia. And actually, before we get over to do that, let's knock out another one of our little Rumble ads here. This sponsorship is from Rumble directly, and it's very important to Rumble's survival. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built a platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted that they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They're attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France. They are attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get enough of it. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we're just happy that you watch us here on Rumble. And with that, let's go ahead and get into what someone we believe to be a very, very good guy, and that is Colonel Derek Harvey. It's the CBS News from Thursday. National Security Council rebuilding with aides aligned with MAGA agenda. Sources say the White House is starting to rebuild the National Security Council with aides top officials believe are staunchly aligned with President Trump's agenda after 6 people were ousted earlier this month. Multiple sources familiar with the matter told CBS News. Derek Harvey, a military intelligence analyst and retired U.S. Army colonel, is expected to be named Senior Director for Intelligence, according to sources.
Hey, Chris, share your screen.
Do I not have that up? Oh,
yep.
Damn it.
Sorry.
It's so weird. On my streams, it just pops it right up there.
I do it all the time.
All right. Thank you for that. Trump says, always we are letting go of people. And he said, people that we don't like, or people that we don't think can do the job, or people that may have loyalties to somebody else. Harvey would replace Brian Walsh, who was among 4 senior directors let go on April 3rd. In all, 6 aides were pushed out. And, they note that all of this is in the wake of the Signal controversy. There's another man, retired Lieutenant Colonel Michael Jensen, an Air Force veteran, is also likely to join the NSC. But let's skip down to the Harvey bit. Harvey was forced out of the NSC during Mr. Trump's first term by then National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster over a difference in vision. Harvey oversaw Middle East affairs at the time. He later worked as a congressional aide to former Rep. Devin Nunes, the top Republican on House Intel. He was previously a senior official at the DIA and served as an advisor to retired General David Petraeus, then CENTCOM commander, and retired Army General Jack Keane, former Army Vice Chief of Staff. And worth noting that Petraeus and if I'm not mistaken, Jack Keane are both what might be called TV generals. House Democrats released phone messages that involved Harvey during the Trump's first term, during his first impeachment trial, on the alleged plan to further his political prospects by getting Ukraine to launch investigations into his likely political challenger. And they say that as though all of that was true. It notes that Harvey was a staunch defender of Trump during that period. But the devolution-y aspects to all this were laid out in part 23 of the Devolution series by the one and only Patel Patriot. And the hit list squad working with Rich Higgins at the NSC, brought in by Michael Flynn to weed out the deep state. Right there at the top, Derek Harvey, Ezra Cohen Watnick, Steve Bannon, and then Rich Higgins at the top of that thread. And John goes through this at great length. The move by McMaster to remove Harvey and then remove Ezra Cohen. And this is just one of the big devolution elements, the Rich Higgins elements, the Steve Bannon elements, as Derek Harvey's been on War Room numerous times over the last few years. All of that is just coming right back around now onto the National Security Council. So we have Waltz in there, the establishment guy removes a bunch of people, and now the real hardcore inside MAGA deep state hunters are being put in place, which is very interesting. There were even rumors of Ezra being moved into a different role, and those rumors haven't been substantiated yet, but I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and actually General Flynn's been posting about that in like the past day or two.
Indeed.
Yeah, and actually I have the post right here.
Cool, bring it up.
Yeah, and so it's somebody else, Booney is the account, and it says meet Ezra Cohen.
At least 60.
Let's actually, I have the longer version of that video. So that General Flynn was saying, I'll second that for what it's worth.
Yeah,
but,
for what it's worth, he has my vote. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's get the I'll bring up the longer version of that video, because this is a kind of a devolution classic here.
Yeah, and that person, by the way, was responding to a post by the general, like a Twitter account. The general, it says, breaking: Donald Trump is reportedly considering appointing Ezra Cohen as deputy director of the NSA. So when General Flynn is saying that, he's saying he has my vote to be the deputy director of the NSA.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So here is the full Ezra clip.
Defense has started the process of formalizing what we have long known: the fundamental role of U.S. special operations in defense and foreign policy, by elevating special operations forces to a level on par with military departments as authorized and directed by Congress. As we enact these reforms, we follow the vision of President John F. Kennedy, who predicted the rise of special operations nearly 60 years ago. He foresaw, quote, another type of war, new in its intensity, ancient in its origin, that would require a whole new kind of strategy, a wholly different kind of forces which are too unconventional to be called conventional forces, which are growing in number and importance and significance. President Kennedy gave these remarks at the opening of the nuclear age, when the Pentagon was primarily organized to plan and direct large conventional operations against superpowers, not special operations short of overt declared conflict. The global demands for special operations forces then and now has confirmed President Kennedy's foresight. And now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of special operations forces. It is fitting that we are again entering an era of great power competition as we gather to affirm the importance of the special operations community. Then as now, I know special operations forces will play a vital role. And by the historic reforms we have enacted today, we will ensure Special Operations Forces has a civilian advocate commensurate to the secretaries of the other military departments. I am honored to serve as your service secretary. Thank you very much.
And so that there was the main devolution period, and these names coming up again. And General Flynn seems to be taking like a more prominent and kind of proactive role and pushing things ahead, which I think is great. Bannon's doing the same thing on War Room, and we want the acceleration. It's not about getting mad at the administration. It's just accelerate. We all got to be pushing at the same time.
Yeah, because if we don't do that, we end up consuming trans content put out by the Daily Wire for the next 4 years, right?
Really?
I mean,
well,
yeah. So
if we move at the speed of the mainstream media, because we believe that a plan is happening the entire time. And what we need to do is applaud as all of this happens, because the normies are going to wake up. Well, I don't know how much time you spend around normies, but when I am around normies, I don't find them particularly awakened, even if their political opinions have shifted from the uniparty left position to the uniparty right position. And if there is one way from the uniparty perspective, from the global regime perspective, to stop this thing, it's by undermining Donald Trump and then outlasting him. And if they can get everybody to stick with the pace of the TV narrative and still be committed to those same TV characters pushing that narrative, man, I mean, how do you move forward from there? That's just going to have us replace Trump with a uniparty right character, and we still go through with the system as it is totally in place. And I feel like that's their plan, but what do I know?
Yeah, I mean, I personally know some pretty base normies. I mean, people who I would classify as normies who have opinions that align with us on a lot of these bigger issues. But I think what kind of defines a normie is that they just lack that that aggressive curiosity, right? The desire to know something, like when it comes to like politics, when it comes to things that are happening here, they kind of just take what Fox News says at face value. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's what's happening, and go about their day. That's kind of what defines a normie. They can be very, very like aware of like the COVID stuff. They can be very aware of all of the things that are happening. But if they just accept what's being told to them and don't push back, that to me is what defines the normie. And all they have to do then is just pacify the normies for the next 4 years until, or however many years until Trump's gone, 12 years until Trump's gone. Then, you know, that's a pretty effective plan. And we saw that work to a certain degree from the first term. So I don't know if you have the Ezra Cohen Watnick post on Derek Harvey. I think
you forwarded over. Yeah,
the one I forwarded over. Yeah, because that is like, considering John's part 23, that is a lot of signal.
Yeah. So let me just go to, right before we go to that, I'm going to go to a post from John. This is from back in early January, after Steve Bannon had both Derek Harvey and Ezra Cohen on the War Room. John said it was a hit list squad reunion, multiple mentions of the Higgins memo. As I've said for years now, the Higgins memo is required reading to understand the scope of what is going on. And let's just play this quick. It's short.
I'm going to give you some more pattern recognition. My first two guests today are two of the greatest warriors we had in President Trump's first term, along with another who passed away in the interim, and that would be Sergeant Rich Higgins, who is an American hero. Sergeant Higgins wrote a memo that laid it all out.
Indeed. And then this is the post that you were referring to.
Bannon's hair looks so glorious there. He cleaned it up. He cleaned it up for the Bill Maher interview, but that's when he looks like that.
I'm with you.
Long hair.
So do you want you found this and sent it over. You want to read through that?
Sure. It says this is David Asher. It says, Colonel D. Harvey, word is that my close friend and colleague, he's tagging him, of many years, Colonel retired Derek Harvey, will be taking over the top intelligence job on the National Security Council. Derek is a hyper-intelligent genius and IC visionary. His contributions to the intelligence community are legendary, including serving as the commander's senior intelligence advisor in Iraq, and it says in parentheses, correctly analyzing the opportunity of an awakening among the Sunni tribes against al-Qaeda, standing up to AFPAC center at CENTCOM, and doing path-breaking work on Iran in Iraq. He also is a great strategist. He helped envision and plan the surge in Iraq, was first to understand and analyze the Iranian IED threat to our troops early on, and later at the first Trump NSC began the process of diplomatic engagement with the Saudis and Israel that led to the historic Abraham Accords. President Trump will be well served, as will the American people. Those in the IC better get cracking because Derek is coming. That is so much signal because, John's part 23 aside, like the fact that he expressly says this guy put the Saudis and the Israelis together to create the Abraham Accords. The Saudis are not in the Abraham Accords, guys. They were not part of it technically, but I've always speculated that they were the ones who helped piece the whole thing together, with them being kind of like at the end of the rainbow, like, hey, let's piece it together. We're going to wait to the very end to sign on because for strategic reasons. But he just confirmed that it was the Saudis and the Israelis, like putting them in the same room, that created the Abraham Accords. So that to me is affirmation of some things that I've speculated on related to that.
No doubt. And then, so just to make it clear for the people who are only listening, Ezra Cohen then retweeted that and said, truth, all those remarks about Derek Harvey. So that's, I mean, you can't be mad at the Derek Harvey appointment. That's a wonderful sign. We'll see if there's one of those on the way for Ezra Cohen, and then we'll just keep on going until until it's less fantasy team, less career deep state holdovers, and more of the pure MAGA right into our veins.
Yeah, I would like to hear someone, whether it's John or somebody else, who would have like the insight into this as to how far does this put this guy from Mike Waltz's job, right? As national security advisor. It's like, is he the next runner up now? Like the vice, like, is he the next guy, like next batter up? Because to your point about the fantasy team, it does feel like we're shifting away from that, and that will shift, and like more credible people, so to speak, like more like meritocracy based people are going to be plugged in. Never really made sense to me that a guy from Congress is going to be plugged in as national security advisor when you have guys like Derek Harvey walking around, right? And Ezra Cohen Watnick and General Michael Flynn.
That I think maybe that'll be the thing. I mean, talking about Flynn bringing in Harvey and Ezra Cohen in the first term, or bringing in Rich Higgins, or however the mechanics of that were, that seems like an obvious choice. And I guess we'll see as things move ahead.
Yeah. So then that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the game theory and like analyzing and evaluating. So why then appoint Mike Waltz in the beginning, right? Like, why appoint him to the position? Why not just plug Flynn in there, or Derek Harvey or Ezra Cohen Watnick, and just hit the ground running 100 miles an hour? And I think there are a lot of different game theory reasons that you could think of. One would be, again, keep your enemies close, friends close, but your enemies closer. Sun Tzu talks about the different types of spies. And one of the best spies you can have is the spy who can disseminate information to your enemy's camp on your behalf, whether or not he realizes he's doing it for you. So if you know that someone is going to run information back to the enemy camp, you bring that guy in close, you make him feel like you have trust between you, and then you tell him information that you know is going to go back to the enemy. Likewise, if the enemy is giving him information, he's then going to give you advice. Like let's just assume for a minute that Mike Waltz is working on behalf of other people, like Donald Trump said in that article, where he said some of these people are working for other people actually, and we got to figure out who those people are and then kick them out. You're going to want to bring him in, give him a seat at the table, and then be like, all right, Mike, what do you think about this situation? And then you know what Mike Waltz is going to tell you is exactly what the enemy camp thinks. Now I know what the enemy camp thinks. I'm basically like giving the enemy camp a seat at the table and getting their intel, like getting their insights on every single thing. And that's a huge strategic advantage, like in the early days of this, of understanding what the enemy's thinking, what the enemy's doing. So from a game theory standpoint, that's why you would do it. And then eventually you would swap him out for somebody who is actually the like deserved player. So,
yep. And let me just go through this quote one more time. Always we are letting go of people, Trump told reporters. People that we don't like, or people that we don't think can do the job, or people that may have loyalties to somebody else. So I don't know how you could possibly think, hearing that quote, that there aren't people around him in the administration, potentially at high-level positions, who don't fit those qualifications. And those qualifications, especially the loyalties to somebody else, that's the indication of the bad guy, like in the mix. And so it is irresponsible not to think that these people might not be the best possible selection for the purest possible purposes, and that Donald Trump might have something else in mind for how this thing is going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another possible thing is that, Trump has people who are in his ear when he's putting this team together in the early days between the election and the inauguration. And by appointing these neocons to his administration, he is placating a lot of forces who otherwise might get panicky and might scramble to launch plans and engage in subversion. And if they think, well, I have my guy in there, I don't need to do all this other stuff. I don't need to do COVID 2.0. I don't need to, subvert him out in the open. I have an inside guy in the camp. That's another reason that you would do it. So there are a lot of 100%. Reasons that align with Trump's no dummy. He knows what he's doing. Of course he knows what he's doing. Here are the reasons that he would do something like that doesn't necessarily implicate or mean that every person he's appointed is the most qualified person to be in that position.
And is going to do the best possible job. And he's got to keep various parties on board for a while so that they have buy-in. Yeah, I think you're totally right, man. I mean, maybe we've made the point enough times. Yeah, I hope that we have, but we still hear people doubting our intentions for bringing these things up. It's not okay to question them. And then once it turns out that they are bad and deserve the questioning, or then more prominent people, obviously, than us are questioning them, then it's okay to question them, or then it's just kayfabe. We have to at least explore the possibilities on all of these people. It's irresponsible not to. Yeah. And it's especially irresponsible when we are being told that we shouldn't tell the truth about what we perceive to be other possibilities, out of loyalty to a plan that we don't know.
Yeah. And to be fair to everyone, I remember back at the beginning of the first Trump administration being excited about James Mattis, right? And it's
Mattis.
Yeah, and hearing the quotes of James Mattis, be prepared to kill every person that you meet, and be wow, that guy's a real badass. And I look back at that, after having all these conversations with Jim Quast and Oak and just a lot of other really, really smart people. And I'm man, that is kind of a psychotic way of thinking, man.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds badass, I guess, but it's also that's. Yeah, I mean, now I look back at some of these early people so I've been through this before and I've been burned many, many times before. And so I'm just speaking from experience where it's the people that you think are good on day one, you learn later are not the people you thought they were.
Indeed. Let's move and talk about Russia a bit, and to maybe transition in theme here. Alexander Dugin. This is actually about a month and a half old. I just read it. It just came up in my feed today, though, and it kind of fits what we're discussing here. An even deeper state and the Dark Enlightenment. And the Dark Enlightenment is something I'm really interested in. We can kind of leave that aside for the purposes of this discussion, but it's basically Curtis Yarvin and Nick Land. Now, Nick Land, I think, is an absolute genius who I really respect. I love his writing. I love the way he thinks. His intuitions in terms of what's happening right now fully align with mine. So that's part of why I like him so much. I only discovered him about 6 months ago, but he's been writing many of these ideas for 10 or 15 years, as has Curtis Yarvin. And the Dark Enlightenment ideas are highly relevant right now, most particularly because Peter Thiel and then downstream from Thiel, JD Vance are Curtis Yarvin fans. Now, I'm not a supporter of Curtis Yarvin, his philosophy, his style of argumentation, or his agenda, but I'm a huge fan of Nick Land. Leaving the Dark Enlightenment stuff aside, what Alexander Dugin describes here is the kind of tech libertarian aspect that glommed on to the Trump movement in 2024. And there's some crossover, of course, with that thing and the kind of information ecosystem of the Maha agenda. I'm fully supportive of the Maha agenda, and I'm pretty supportive of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But a lot of the information space around that is the same as the tech libertarian space. It's got a lot of crossover into the Ron DeSantis and Conning space. So I don't trust any of that. And a lot of people do believe that's downstream from Peter Thiel. And so I'll just read this last paragraph here and then turn it over to you, Ghost. This was how Dugan summarized. And Dugan, if you don't know, is kind of like a similar character in Russia to what Steve Bannon might be considered here in America. But he says, if this interpretation is correct, many things become clearer. Primarily, we understand precisely which force and for what far-reaching purposes allowed Trump to win. Examples of how elections can be prevented include the 2020 U.S. election and current European politics. Secondly, it explains why resistance from the deep state was relatively easy to overcome. One segment of it, the high-tech sector and certain factions within the security and intelligence communities, had already been ideologically reformed according to the principles of the Dark Enlightenment. And that's the Yarvin side, not the land side. Finally, it clarifies why Trump is acting so decisively. It's not simply a matter of temperament, but a global plan to accelerate the progression of time itself. This transcends mere populism. It is philosophy, strategy, and even metaphysics.
Wow. That makes me think of the executive order from earlier this week, the energy one, where Kratskios, you remember that one? I think his name is Kratskios. Is like I think he's the Secretary of Energy.
Kratzios. He's the director of the Office of, it's like OSTP or Office of Science and Technology Policy.
Science and Technology, that's right. Science and Technology Policy, that's right. And he talked about like bridging time and space, right? He's like, we're going to close, like, bridge time and space. And John and I talked about this a little bit on his show, but we kind of read that as potentially just talking about, hyper speed rail and stuff, just getting to places, point A to point B much faster, and not necessarily like wormholes or teleportation necessarily. But that aligns with what you just read about accelerating like time itself. I mean, it just makes me think of all the same things, and some of it's conceptual. It's all conceptual. I get that, but I don't know. There's a lot of parallels. So very interesting.
Indeed. But that part of the deep state, I've been talking about this for the entire period since JD Vance was named as the running mate in the very real campaign last year to overcome the very real candidate Kamala Harris. The element of the tech libertarian set that was fully on board with the uniparty agenda, and then all of a sudden became the world's biggest Trump fans, and what totally won him the election, that should be more unsettling than I think it is for people in our community, because everybody's so excited about the fact that we won. The job's not done. And that's it. It's not that I'm not optimistic. I'm as optimistic as I've ever been. It's that the job's not done. And there are clearly still threats out there. And even if you don't think that they're threats politically to Republicans or even threats to Donald Trump, like, there is still the threat to humanity that exists with people creating technologies that can be used, as much as they can be used for good, they can also be used for the most extreme evil and the elimination of human liberty on this planet for everyone who's not them. And there are elements of that movement who absolutely still want that. And the fact that they've said that they were Trump supporters in 2024 doesn't change where that's ultimately going for them.
Yeah. And I think that we have to, BB calls it being bicameral, and I think that's a really good way of looking at it. It's like, if you want to think, it's okay to map onto a specific way of looking at things. I think it's just part of like a natural bias that forms as you take in information and tend to lean one way or the other. But I think you absolutely need to maintain an open mind about alternatives. And an example I will give is the Mark Zuckerberg thing. Remember when Mark Zuckerberg gave $1 million to Trump's inauguration, where everyone was like, oh my gosh, he's capitulating. He's captured, like Trump's captured him and he's come and bent the knee. Well, Mark Zuckerberg is in court this week defending Meta against an antitrust suit that is basically going to, like, if convicted, he is going to be called a monopoly and Meta might get broken up. So that's probably the reason he gave Trump $1 million is he's hoping to get relief from Trump and help with that situation. And so that would mean that Mark Zuckerberg was responding to a set of incentives and not capitulating, not necessarily bending the knee. He wasn't necessarily captured. He was just acting in his own best interest. And his own best interest in that moment was to give Trump $1 million and make it look like he was buddying up to him. And I can say the same thing about Apple. Apple agreeing to give Trump $500 million or agreeing to invest $500 million in the U.S. economy. They're being investigated in multiple jurisdictions right now for human and child trafficking, for the slave trade in Africa, in relation to how these rare earth minerals are being mined in the eastern DR Congo. And it looks like they're probably going to be prosecuted at some point, maybe in Belgium, maybe in Holland, maybe in England. And so I think they're probably trying to make friends with some people to try to win some allies politically for that reason. So again, I don't look at all these things happening as like capitulation. I just see it as incentive structures changing, the landscape evolving, and Trump capitalizing on it. And as CanCon and I discussed yesterday on Badlands Daily, it would be great if Trump rug pulls Zuckerberg, he does get screwed. Meta does get like a really aggressive judgment leveled against them. And then the whole idea of I'm going to go give $1 million to a politician and he's going to scratch my back kind of goes away, because dude, you just gave Trump $1 million and then he hung you out to dry like that. And I think Trump's going to keep doing that. Yeah, give me your $1 million. I'm not going to help you. That's going to change the entire political landscape, because you can no longer trust those favors anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the $1 million donations to the inauguration thing, that has never seems to me like it would be the sort of thing that could sway a guy like Donald Trump. I mean, some of like the Ron people and the people blaming Trump like for getting the vaccine or something, they went on like this one guy calls Trump Grandpa Moderna because like Pfizer or Moderna or something donated $1 million to his first inaugural. Like, the billionaire is going to commit genocide for $1 million. Really? That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Let's hit just a couple more Russia things, and then we will get everybody out of here so you can get a good night's sleep for Easter Sunday tomorrow. I thought this was interesting from Bloomberg this week. One of the offers apparently in the peace negotiation was to ease sanctions on Russia. Now, we've already heard that we're going to have the, and I probably didn't even bring that screen up on to the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. No, you didn't.
Oh, well, I was just bringing it up to show people the article and then taking it off, and I'll throw that back up there. But, it seems like, and I'll let you go through this, but it seems like we're going to get back to the status quo ante. That's what the peace deal is going to be. The eastern part of Ukraine, Crimea, those are going to be independent or just Russia, which they have voted to be. Denazification, no NATO, no EU. Those were the standards. And now we're getting the easing of sanctions. That was economic warfare by the global regime waged against Russia and the Russian people that had already failed immediately in 2022 and certainly could not possibly matter now, except in business relationships, countries being able to do business with Russia. But in terms of the economic sanctions and stuff, seems largely irrelevant. What are you thinking?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the economic sanctions, I think it's been proven or demonstrated that the decoupling of Russia from the Western banking apparatus has been one of the greatest things to happen to Russia. Bloomberg came out this week and reported that the ruble is the number one currency of 2024, the number one performing currency of 2024. So it's like, I mean, that there's the proof right there. And if you will remember that after that happened, like after the sanctions came down, Putin pegged the ruble to the gold standard. And then they had like a 3-month dip, and then all of a sudden it went straight up, and it's been going up ever since. So the ruble is outperforming all the other currencies in terms of like year over year, I guess. And it's been great for Russia. Same with China. I think the whole China tariff war thing is mutually beneficial decoupling.
Okay, so you sent me this article from RT with some quotes from a Russian diplomat about Donald Trump and his efforts. The headline here, Trump understands root causes of Ukraine conflict, according to a Putin aide. And they're talking here about Yuri Ushakov. And he says, it seems to me that the American leadership, including the president, understands the root causes of the conflict. He noted, however, an anti-Russian climate has been created in America and Europe over the past years and even decades. This climate hinders the advancement of quite reasonable ideas, which some leaders, including in Washington, agree with. And you would have to assume that that means the President Donald Trump. And I will let you give your thoughts, Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, it's the language of that headline is really interesting. Trump understands the root causes of Ukraine. And that would imply to me the CIA and the Maidan coup of 2014, of course. But, Burning Bright joined me on the Book of Trump this week, and we talked about the origins of Putin. And in order to talk about that, him entering office in the year 2000, we had to go back to 1991 and the collapse of the Soviet Union and what happened in Russia, specifically Ukraine, in the 9 years leading up to Putin coming into office, and the aluminum wars, where these KGB agents leveraged all of their resources in order to become the new wave of Russian oligarchs. And one of them would be Oleg Deripaska, who, of course, is at the center of the Russia gate. Another one is Roman Abramovich, who has been really like front and center and the target of Putin's ire ever since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. So if Trump really understands what's going on there, he understands that the real bad guys are the people actually probably on the ground here in America, as much as maybe like Belgium, London, etc. And not necessarily about what's happening on the ground in Kiev, although I do think that there probably is like the Nazification element that Putin has alluded to. So what that would mean is that Trump needs to go to war with his own government, right? I mean, he's in conflict with his own government, which would sound familiar, I think, to anyone who's tracked this story going back to whatever, 2016, 2020, whenever you jumped into it. And to me, it seems like the resolution to this story, which is us liberating ourselves from this parasite in DC, is going to require us aligning ourselves with Vladimir Putin and with the Sovereign Alliance, and then basically coming full circle against the people that have been going after Vladimir Putin this whole time. So we are probably going to get to that point in that article. If you want to pull it back up at the very bottom, really, really interesting. Yeah, the last like let me read the last sentence from that article, the last paragraph from that article, because the other deployment, we don't need to pull up the other articles that led up to this article, but as Steve Witkoff, they just announced that Steve Witkoff is going to go for a third meeting with Putin. Now he met in February, he met last Friday, and if you scroll down to the bottom, it says. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned on Friday that time is running out for diplomacy. He said the Trump administration is prepared to throw in the towel soon if talks do not progress. And that aligns also with what we're hearing with Iran, because Iran, Barack Ravid, we're not going to do Iran tonight, but Barack Ravid just reported that they did a 4-hour meeting in Doha, or not Doha, Rome. Yeah, in Rome today with our girl Giorgia Meloni, who was doing like the love triangle with Trump and Elon back in December. And it sounds like, from what Barack Ravid is reporting, is that Wickoff is going to allow Iran to have a civil nuclear energy program and not create nuclear weapons, which is what I speculated and we speculated was the plan all along, was to give them a civil nuclear energy program, not do the weapons. And now you're hearing talk of airstrikes on Iran like are imminent. And so, I think we're going to see a situation where the deep state, and by deep state I mean the neocon Republican Party, a lot of these people who people have been cheerleading because they're in Trump's orbit, are going to be standing on the table saying, let's strike Russia now, let's strike Iran now, let's do more war. And then Trump and Putin, who are supposed to meet in Riyadh in a few weeks, are probably going to stand shoulder to shoulder and say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to have peace. And that's going to be a conflict. And I'm really looking forward to that conflict playing out, because I think a lot of the bad guys in the U.S. government are going to be exposed.
Let's hope so. A couple more things. Let's go to, this is RT on X, formerly Twitter. Putin declares an Easter truce in Ukraine from 6 p.m. April 19th to midnight April 21st. We expect Ukraine to follow this example. And there's a video of Putin talking that I believe is translated.
You're not sharing.
Oh, of course I'm not.
Sorry.
It's amazing.
Dude, I do it all the time.
Here we are.
Out of humanitarian consideration, from 18 hours, from 6 p.m. until midnight, the Russian Federation declares an Easter truce. I order for this period to stop all the hostilities for this period from 6 p.m. until midnight, considering, and we expect the Ukraine to follow this example. At the same time, we need to be ready to fend off any aggression coming from Ukraine. We know that the Kiev regime, as you have just reported, has violated the agreements not to target energy infrastructure facilities. So please be ready to respond to any aggression. Out of humanitarian consideration, from 18.
All right. So we have a truce right now, a ceasefire, and CNN wants us to know that the real strategy behind Russia's sudden truce announcement is to make it look like, first of all, it's going to be a logistical nightmare for Ukraine's forces to suddenly immediately stop fighting at Putin's behest. Some frontline positions may be in the middle of fierce clashes when this order comes, though, and a cessation of this nature likely requires days of preparation and readiness. This guy guesses about what may or may not be going on over there. Misinformation is bound to confuse troops. That's a big worry. And the truce is going to create chaos. He says ultimately this brief, likely theoretical, probably rhetorical, and entirely unilateral stop to a 3-year war is likely to do more damage to the role of diplomacy in the coming months than it does to support it. So they are very, very mad that Ukraine and Russia are going to have a truce for 30 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Sun Tzu who wrote that the most catastrophic and destructive thing that can possibly happen in the midst of a war is for peace to break out.
Right, exactly. Especially for the country that is getting crushed.
That is just getting
when the
pummeled.
people doing the crushing propose that they're just going to stop fighting for 30 hours, and it would be nice if you did too. Yeah. That's the worst thing that could happen to Ukraine. And by the way, I think Zelensky already agreed to it or something.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, very based Putin taking Easter off. because Russia is extremely based and very Christian, and the Russian government is far more Christian than the American government is right now. So that's just a statement of fact.
And you would have to think that that's the reason he's doing it. It's an Easter truce for Easter. And I think it's because, if I'm not mistaken, Easter lines up on the Orthodox schedule, and they're both the same day this year. Someone in the chat can check me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that I read that. So that's his intent. And they're like, it's not that. He's just trying to trick the comedic actor. So ridiculous.
But you got to love when like something as simple as that just causes these morons to just have aneurysms. I mean, it really is laugh out loud funny.
All right. So let's knock out one more Rumble ad. Then we'll get to the Rumble rants, and then we're going to get everybody right on out of here. But before we do that, Rumble has its own proprietary coffee called 1775 coffee. And we just talked about the 250-year anniversary of the key events in 1775. Single origin, small farm, hand-picked, specialty grade coffee that stands for quality, free speech, and calling out BS when it matters. Forget these stale, mass-produced beans, roasted just enough to hide the flaws. Dark roast hits like a Trump tariff. Medium roast keeps it bold without the bitterness. And Vitality Mushroom Blend, real energy and lasting focus, no synthetic garbage. For K-Cup pods, whole bean, or fresh ground coffee, go to 1775coffee.com. Use code STUDIO for 15% off and start your morning with coffee that stands for something. Oh, and every dollar spent enters you to win a Cybertruck and $30,000 in cash. 1775coffee.com. And all right, we got a bunch of Rumble rants to get to. It's funny, that little sponsor banner is blocking the name, but I see a $117 Rumble rant, and I saw that earlier in the episode. Micro Toolmaker was getting all over the what in the world? I thought I had this picture. He was getting all over the subscriptions as well. And so I have to bring up Subscription Bay for Micro Toolmaker there. And
appreciate Micro.
Yeah, and thank him for the Rumble rant. DPH, the show of shows for all things Patriots USA. WWG1WGA, where we go on, we go all. S. Boosin, $5. Love you both and your brilliant minds. My boys used to run around the house saying, bad boys, what you going to do when they come for you? I think all of us did that.
I was going to say, I definitely did that.
Yep. Happy Easter and love to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Doctor and name only, $50. Chris, please ask John to share the info I sent about tactical civics. You'll be interested in how we plan to restore our first of the original 12 proposed amendments waiting to be ratified. Thank you for that, and I will.
Thank you.
Old School 69, $1. Is our corrupt system too large and complex to simply rip the Band-Aid off using the Bukele model to take down everything bad and restore true sovereign values instead of the game of waking people up? Well, I think the Bukele model is probably our model. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would also say that I think what's in our interest, though, is longevity, because we can fix this. If Trump can fix this with executive order, it can be restored with executive order. You're right. I mean, anything that Trump does can be undone. And the question is, are we going to have the will to stop it from being undone? And with Trump, when Trump's gone, 25 years from now, are we going to have the will to stop it from being undone? And I'm not confident in this moment right now. We are. I think we have a little more growth to go through before, as a country, before we are going to, as a group, as a unit, stand up and be able to stop it.
Hard to argue with that. $1 Keith O'Higgins. Hey, Ghost, as Lexington and Concord began the shrinkage of the British Empire, it also emboldened the Russian Empire expanding in 1778. Wars are about land, not chicks like Helen from Troy. Fair enough.
Very true. Yeah, and Russia was fighting the Ottomans and the British, and John Paul Jones, who was the father of the U.S. Navy, was appointed by Catherine the Great as a rear admiral in the Russian Navy, and Russia was allies, funny enough, with Syria. So,
wow, good stuff. 1027 JS, $20. Thank you for your analyses. Thank you very much for your Rumble rant.
Yeah, thank you.
Etho Higgins, $1. If NSA Director John Bolton was Trump's Rottweiler, does that make Jake Sullivan Biden's Triumph the insult dog? I think that's a very good call. Angie K, $5. Chris, I sent you something to research on the vax and John Rich telling the truth to Trump. Okay, I'll keep an eye out. Keith O'Higgins, the IRS Shipley story saga, Shapley, I think he means there, unless he's making a joke. Sounds very similar to the General Flynn, Mike Pence FBI trap turmoil skit from 2017. Does it matter who runs IRS when External Revenue Service calls shots? Agreed.
Good point.
Bear 1007, $20. End the Fed. Send Powell to April showers. Keith O'Higgins back again. Not to date fag or tell patriots wanting arrests to grab a calendar, but we only have 2 primetime seasons for rioting before the midterms. I just want to get my Xmas looting in early this year. Okay. And I think he sent that twice, actually, so I don't need to read it again. 808 France, $5. Thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
JCQ 17, $14. I can't understand why the Trump admin is pushing the biolabs narrative, which has to be part of the regime's plan B for another pandemic. Getting real tired of the lies and psyops. I am with you. This hat right here says opt out for that exact reason. Valesco,
it is very timely to start talking about the Ukrainian biolabs, though. We should be talking about the secret labs they had there and whatever the hell they were doing there, with everything happening. Now that we're going to reconcile with Putin, maybe Putin can hand over the materials that he recovered that Tory Newland was freaking out about when being questioned by Marco Rubio, of all people, back in 2023.
Very good call. Valesco 16, when that $5, when that Ezra video came out around 5 years ago, Scotty pointed out the landscapers in the background raking leaves uphill. I had just gotten into the info war and trying to figure out the messaging. And yeah, I noticed those guys too. I didn't think about raking uphill. I'm not sure that's a thing. I don't know. DJ Corrigan, $10. The ADHD of D class. You nailed it. You nailed it, Gordon. Thanks for another bang up performance of show, gentlemen. You always leave me and Una Panuna Banca satisfied. And Cindy Waters, $10. Best episode ever. Something is different. Can't quite put my finger on it. How dare you? Aloha MF, $20. If the Keir Starmer and Lord Ali gay sex story is real or believed by the public, will this degrade Trump's tariff offer? Well, I have no idea about that story, and I don't know.
I've never heard of that story, but I wouldn't put anything above those Brits.
James Jay McLean, you guys are great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I am scrolling. Bear 1007, great movie, excellent episode. As the world turns, tune in tomorrow. Don't miss a minute of what comes next. Where we go one, we go all.
Thank you.
F. Patrick, $20. POTUS, Trump controls timeline for the mass arrests. Pam and Cash are tasked with cleaning up the streets and their agencies. Perhaps.
Yep.
And I think that is it. All right.
Thank y'all so much for your generosity. Really appreciate your support.
Yes. And we're going to get everybody out of here on Trump's Easter message. We hope you all have a happy Easter tomorrow. Ghost, any final words?
No, man. I appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun. Happy Easter, everybody. God bless you all.
Yep. And you are doing a new show on Fridays now at 2 p.m.
Yes, Fridays at 2.
Geopolitics with Ghost.
That's right.
Good stuff. And guys, you can find my podcast on Rumble or YouTube at I'm Your Moderator, and at the Substack address, I'm Your Moderator.substack.com. And you go right ahead.
I was just going to say the episode that y'all did on Story Hour this week was excellent with Jim Quast. Amazing conversation. I encourage everyone to go watch the Badlands Story Hour. Y'all did Top Gun Maverick, and it was awesome. So please go listen to that.
Well, thank you very much, my friend. And this week, Burning Bright and I will be discussing Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. So that'll be a fun one. And with that, everybody, we will bid you adieu and leave you with Donald Trump.
On Easter Sunday, we celebrate his glorious resurrection and proclaim, as Christians have done for nearly 2,000 years, he is risen. Through the pain and sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, we saw God's boundless love and devotion to all humanity. And in that moment of his resurrection, history was forever changed with the promise of everlasting life. As we approach this joyous Easter Sunday, I want to wish Christians everywhere a happy and beautiful and blessed holiday. America is a nation of believers. We need God. We want God. And with his help, we will make our nation stronger, safer, greater, and more prosperous, and much more united than ever before. Thank you to everyone, and have a really happy Easter.